where can you make better money? Running that NASCAR truck or that mod? Now,
That's the
you
question,
win
right?
all the time, you know.
That's that's tough. I feel like so many racers, everybody's situation's a little bit different. Whether they have sponsorship, whether they drive for a car owner, the NASCAR side of it is totally different, in that it's so market driven and sponsor driven. You got to be a great racer to be in NASCAR, as you know, and you got to have the funding and the sponsorship behind you. And while I was bouncing around racing, I'm like, man, that was my goal. I mean, I want to run NASCAR. I just thought if I win every dirt race I run for a whole year, at the end of the year, there's going to be a phone call. Rick Hendrick's going to call. Somebody's going to say, hey, man, why don't you come try this out? And it never happened. And I'm racing, racing, racing. And I finally got hooked up with Buzz Chu, Ron St. Marie Spot, his crew chief, and when I was up in Old Forge, they ran their Bush North car out of a shop up there. And I needed a place to store my stuff. Like I said, I had a couple car owners and just needed a place to work on it. So Spot was like, come up and you can work on your stuff out of here. So I learned a lot in those 3 years about about where you can kind of make your money and how it works. And these guys are in Bush North. They got, full jam Bush cars. I've never even seen something like that before, just to be in the same shop with those guys. And he's like, look, if you can get a good deal together, driving for these guys on dirt, he goes, you got to pursue that, and because you make yourself a pretty good living. And I listened to Spot, and that's what he said to do, and that's what I went and did. And I kind of put this whole NASCAR thing on the shelf, until I got hooked up with Chris Larson and Halmar. But I guess it all depends. Some rides in NASCAR you got to bring the funds and the sponsorship, and so I think some guys probably race for nothing. They're just racing to do it, to get their name out there, build their brand, whatever, get experience. On the dirt side of it, there seems like, in the dirt modified world, in late models and sprint cars, if you can get out there and get your name out there and get rolling, you got a good chance a car owner is going to pick you up and say, all right, kid, I'll give you 25% or 40% or something, and a place to stay. Or if you come help and work on the car, we'll give you a couple $100 a week. So I think there's more avenues to make a living doing it on the dirt side. I don't know if you disagree or agree. You see it all over the country. So I don't know what your thoughts are on all that, but
Well,
that's kind of what I've seen on my end.
you know what? This is not about me, but you've asked me this, so I'm going to answer you. I've done plenty videos that you cannot make a living running dirt. And that was my thought in my time. See, Stewart, I got very lucky. I started in ASA, and when I went to NASCAR, I was right when we were getting ready to go wheels up. NASCAR was going to the moon.
Yeah.
I got square D because a regional rep knocked on my door and said, Kenny Wallace, we want to sponsor you. And it was a $6 million deal. Back then, now this is kind of a cliche and a joke. In my NASCAR days in the 90s, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, you were interviewing the sponsors. People,
Right. Yeah.
so your time is way different and way harder than mine. Hello, everyone. Race car driver Kenny Wallace here. Live events are about creating memories with friends and family, and tickets provide that opportunity. I'll never forget when I watched the St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup in 2019. We got about halfway through that year, and the Blues, I think we were in last place. I was at a game, had some good seats, and Vladimir Tarasenko, he skated off the ice rink and he was shaking his head. I looked at my friend Lauren and I said, we're in trouble. Well, the next day, we fired the coach and got a new one, and we were off to the races. I will never forget that memory with my dear friend Lauren, and we won the Stanley Cup. And for my next St. Louis Blues hockey game, I'm going to use my new sponsor, Game Time, to buy my tickets. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concert, and theater tickets in your city. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You'll get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you with 110% of the difference. You can save even more if you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service ticketing policy in the industry. Go to the link in my description to download the Game Time app and use code Kenny Wallace for $20 off your first purchase. So when I look at you and you ask me my opinion, you got a God-given talent. You're one of the greatest dirt racers of all time. So you win all the time. So yeah, Stewart Friesen can make a living running dirt because you'll win all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say,
And the purses are pretty good. You know, if you can get
they're
a good deal
incredible.
racing for a car owner, making, you know, I call it union rate, 40%, right? Come and drive my car.
Yeah.
Norm Hansel gave me that one down in Pennsylvania. You know what the union rate was, and he says, like, I remember going to race for him one time. And he says, if you think you're gonna get union rate, you're crazy. I'm giving you 30%, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take whatever. But yeah, you can, you know, look at guys like David Gravel, you know, doing great. You know, Rico, all these guys, you know, running sprint cars, and the modified stuff here in the Northeast is good. You know, we just ran for 53,000 to win. You know, last weekend, Saturday at Super Dirt Week, 20,000 to win the small block. You know, Matty Williamson just won 20,000 the week before. He won another 20,000 up at Brockville last weekend. So here's a guy, Matt Williamson, that's made, you know, over 100 grand in a month in the Northeast running our style modifieds, and it's good. You know, it's racing strong. Everybody wants to, like, say, you know, I think value how racing is right now. Is it good? Is it bad? Right? You talk about it a lot, and for all intents and purposes, there's some shows we go to where it might pay 5 or 10 grand to win. It's like, man, the promoter's not getting it on this one because the crowd turnout didn't come out. But now with the streaming services, it doesn't mean only 500 people watch that race, because there's probably 15,000 subscriptions online that watch that race too. So it's just a little bit different. But like I said, sometimes the promoter hits a home run and makes some money. Sometimes, you know, they lose a couple bucks, but we're lucky to have the guys that we race for up here in the Northeast that are willing to put the money on the line that we can go chase.
We'll end this conversation like this. 2 years ago, I made that video about you cannot make a living running dirt. Times have changed. And like I talked to Brad Sweet on Kenny Conversation. He said, Kenny, here's the way it is with World of Outlaws or High Limit. The top three, you get Napa and you get Casey Kane as your car owner. I can make a good living because Brad Sweet, he's winning. He's driving for Casey Kane. He's got Napa. We're in tall cotton now. But he said the top three, we can make a living. So it'd be like Stewart Friesen, as you say, Matt Shepard. You guys are making a living, the top three. Then Brad Sweet said 4, 5, or 6. You know, you get around the 7th driver. Now we need a real job. Now we got to find something else to do to make a living. What do you think about what Brad said about that?
I think he's right. You know, when I was a vagabond dirt racer, you know, 10, 15 years ago, when I went to a track, I knew I had to run top 5. You know, I always said top 5 pays the bills. That's what I tell Alex all the time. You know, Alex Yankowski, he's a young kid. He's 21 years old. And I'm like, if you can go, he's trying to do it on his own. He's got some good sponsorship and some good rides. And I'm like, but you got to run, like you said, if you want to make some decent money, top 5s pay the bills. So that's the key. If you can, you know, as I was learning, if I could get a third or get on the podium or squeak out a win or two here and there, that's good. But you need to be, if you want to do this and make a living, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. It's not just all, you know, race car drivers and pretty girls and like you said, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You got to be in the shop working on your stuff. A lot of these Northeast modifieds, you know, like the drivers are the crew chief. You got to be able to call your own shots, and with a little bit of track time, you know, you get, as you know, dirt racing. You know, the drivers on the sprint car side of it or late models, they got to be able to get out of their car, know exactly what's in their car, and either tell somebody to do it or communicate with somebody that's also very good. Like I have Tommy here, we can communicate really good to make a change quickly. And that's the experience level, and then that's where you're making money too when you get that experience level. So it's a hard thing to build up to, but if you're dedicated and really grind it out, you know, it's doable.
So we'll end this. I keep saying we're going to end this. I love this conversation. In ending, here is my answer. Can you make a living running dirt? If you're Matt Shepard or you're Stewart Friesen, yes.